Today's story is a folktale from Uttar Pradesh. It's about Singham, a misunderstood lion. You'll see how his fellow animals react to his upcoming wedding and what he really should have done to make friends. Welcome to Stories from India. This is a podcast that will take you on a journey through the rich mythology, folklore, and history of the Indian subcontinent. I am Narad Muni, the celestial storyteller and the original Time Lord. With my ability to travel through space and time, I can bring you fascinating stories from the past, the present, and the future. From the epic tales of the Mahabharata and Ramayana to the folk tales of the Panchatantra, to stories of Akbar Birbal and Tenali Raman, I have a story for every occasion. The purpose of the stories is neither to pass judgment nor to indoctrinate. My goal is only to share these stories with people who may not have heard them before, and to make them more entertaining for those who have. In this episode, we are doing a folk tale from the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. If you're not very familiar with states in India, Uttar Pradesh is the most populous. If it were a country, it would be the fifth most populated country in the world. Naturally, that means the culture is very rich, and a lot of different folk tales that have spread over this land and over the centuries. One such story is about a lion. Let's call him Singham, because that's what that word means, lion in Tamil. And I get it, this is not a Tamil folktale, but one from Uttar Pradesh. But hey, give me a little liberty here to recycle something from pop culture. The scene is set in a jungle during a weekly tea party. The elephant was hosting, which was always great because he never ran out of food. And it was vegetarian, healthy, and all that. Say, you know what I heard on the grapevine? The rhino asked. You were on the grapevine? I didn't think they could take your weight, Monkey replied. She prided herself on being the authority on every kind of tree and vine that there was. Perhaps you've come across her guidebook, Vine Vaulting, a guide to treetop triumph. Mrs. Genda, the rhino, laughed heartily, which shook all the teacups. She had to explain that it was just an expression. A little bird had told her that the long vacant king of the jungle position was about to be filled. Was it a lion? The rhino's curious companions wondered. Of course it's a lion. Were you expecting a porcupine? A particularly pessimistic rabbit spoke up at this point. If he's the despotic but lazy kind of lion, we may have to offer up one of our own as food to him every day. Sab ki ulti ginti chalu, meaning there was a countdown now to each of their lives. Of course, what did you expect? The fox reminded the rabbit. It's a jungle out here. For all we know, one day you may start eating me. Fast forward a couple of weeks later. The same crew had assembled again. And this time, they were a lot more nervous than they had been. Did you see how sharp his teeth are? The deer asked. And his roar is absolutely terrifying, the boar said. Not just me and my family. यहां से 50 कोस दूर गांव में जब बच्चा रोता है तो मां कहती है, बेटा सो जा, नहीं तो सिंघम आ जाएगा. Meaning, even 100 miles away, villagers put their kids to sleep with the threat that the lion might arrive. The lion, who was named Singham. But I guess you figured that out. But he's just one. There are so many of us, the monkey observed. There's safety in numbers and all that. The rabbit continued to be pessimistic. Animals का झुंड कितना ही बड़ा हो, उसके लिए एक शेर ही काफी होता है. Correctly so. Regardless of how large a group of animals they were talking about, one lion would be quite sufficient for them. Maybe it was the sharp teeth or the roar, as some of the animals noted. It's mainly his fierce mane, the camel said. I can't face him. You certainly can't, snapped the jackal. You've got 3 stomachs, and you still don't have the guts. You don't have the guts either, the camel retorted. Neither your own nor the ones you scavenge. All through this, the turtle remained silent. I could tell them a thing or two, he thought, but I won't. After all, what Singham told me was a privileged conversation. You see, the turtle was a therapist, and Singham was his client. There was a confidentiality agreement between a therapist and their client. Even back then, the turtle considered it binding, though neither animal had signed any paper to that effect. And if it came to it, there wasn't really a court of law to uphold it. The turtle cast his mind back to what had happened just the day before. Singham had walked into his office, and the turtle had been terrified. He had cursed his own luck, believing this is what they called putting your head in the lion's mouth. But for the moment, he seemed safe, because Singham proceeded to lie down on the couch. It still terrified the turtle, but he couldn't very well say no to anyone who came to him for help, could he? He remembered his hippopotamus oath. What seems to be the problem, King? The turtle asked, cautiously. It's my pride, the king of the jungle replied, adding a roar that knocked over a flower pot or two. Are you talking about your family or your in-laws? Neither. I don't mean pride as in a social unit of lions. I mean a deep sense of satisfaction in my own achievements. Singham roared again to show his displeasure. All I wanted was to take my place in the circle of life. I've been singing songs my whole life about how I just can't wait to be king. And now, when I am king, everyone hates me. The turtle made a notch in his notebook about something he had seen in his trusty handbook, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5. The turtle thought Singham's symptoms exactly matched a condition called shellfish syndrome, aka terrapin temptation disorder, and that immediately worried the turtle. He hid the fact from Singham because one other consequence of shellfish syndrome was that the patient developed an irrational craving for turtles upon hearing their diagnosis. The therapist quickly changed the subject, or as quickly as he could manage. Do you think everyone really hates you? Or do they just fear you? In a profession where he was paid by the hour, it really helped him to speak really slow. Singham considered the question.
Well, according to Master Yoda, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate. So, yes, it's very likely that fear is at the root of their hate. Let's assume you're right. What if everyone does indeed fear me? What then?
Have you considered packing your bags and leaving? I hear there's plenty of demand for lions in Gir National Park. And while some of the animals there might be terrified of you, the other lions and lionesses might have a more sunny disposition. I know what you're thinking. Should the turtle really be giving advice like that? But believe me, shellfish syndrome is no joke. Too many of his family had fallen prey. And anyway, the attempt was futile. It had no effect on Singham.
Out of the question. ये जंगल मेरा है और मैं इस जंगल का.
He roared again, affirming that this jungle belonged to him, just as he belonged to this jungle. He expressed his frustration again.
I don't understand this beastly animosity. मेरे साथ कुछ भी करने का, मेरा ego hurt नहीं करने का. I'm just a regular good guy here. I don't even eat other animals. I'm strictly on an insect diet.
This shocked the turtle. Insects? He asked, incredulously.
Yes, what's so surprising about it?
Singham retorted.
I eat insects. They're slimy, yet satisfying. I learned it from this legendary Lion King of the past. It's this mantra that I call Hakuna Matata. No worries if you don't understand it.
Oh, but I do, the turtle replied, immensely relieved at this discovery that his patient was not in fact going to eat him before the session was over. Here, have some gummy worms. I especially keep a well-stocked supply.
Ooh, the little green-filled kind,
Singham said, as he helped himself to a barrelful. The gummy worms seemed to calm down Singham.
So, my dear turtle, old chap, what do you think I should do? I want to be friends with everyone. How do I get them to warm up? And by that, I don't mean physically, like warming up your food. I just mean socially.
The therapist suggested a housewarming party. But that wouldn't have worked. Singham's den wasn't large enough to fit some of the larger animals. They brainstormed a bit, and ultimately, Singham got it.
What if I invite them to my wedding?
The turtle thought that was an excellent idea. That was the way to win friends and influence people out of their all lions are evil mindset. Let's go back to the tea party. Like I explained, the turtle couldn't say a word about what he had learned about Singham, privileged conversation, and all that. The animals dispersed without any bright ideas for dealing with their ferocious new king. A few days later, Singham was doing the rounds, trying to rally a crowd to his wedding. His first target was the monkey. It was tricky to have a conversation with the monkey, though. She was constantly on the move. But finally, after several hours of chasing, Singham trapped the monkey near a rocky cliff. With no vines in sight, the monkey thought this was the end.
Mischievous Mrs. Monkey, you're making my mouth water.
As Mrs. Monkey screeched, Singham quickly clarified. It's an involuntary reaction to the chase. I don't mean that I'm about to eat you. It took several deep breaths before Mrs. Monkey could slowly recover from the scare. What exactly did Singham want? She wanted to know. Turns out he just wanted to invite her to his wedding. Singham also said it would be fantastic if she could come dance at his wedding. He had heard stories of her hook step, and he was sure it would delight all the wedding guests. Leaving Mrs. Monkey with an invitation and a shocked expression, Singham strolled off. Who was next on his list to invite? Ooh, it was Mr. Hathi, the elephant.
आली रे आली मिस्टर हाथी, अतः तुझी बारी आली.
That just means it was the elephant's turn next. Mr. Hathi found it hard to believe.
I'm not lying,
Singham said sincerely, since he was, after all, speaking the truth. Of course you are, Mr. Hathi replied, since he had no misapprehension about Singham's species. He was very definitely a lion. But Singham seemed to be suffering from a delusion. So the elephant tried to ease into it. Let's take the bull by the horns and address this elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room right now is me and my marriage,
Singham pointed out, adding to this confusion. Mr. Hathi realized that this conversation was going nowhere. How do you talk to a lion who thinks he's an elephant? So Mr. Hathi changed tactics. Have you considered seeing Mr. Turtle? He's an excellent psychotherapist. Singham clarified that he had, in fact, been seeing Mr. Turtle. The elephant was encouraged by this positive sign that Singham seemed to be taking steps to get better at least. Certainly, a lion who thought he was an elephant and not a lion needed all the emotional support and encouragement that Mr. Hathi could provide. Don't give up seeing Mr. Turtle. Carry on visiting him at his every waking moment. Camp outside his doorstep. If you see him relaxing in a hammock, tap him on the shoulder and remind him that he needs to be doing more sessions with you. Singham did not pursue this subject further. He handed the invite to the elephant and moved on. Worst case, if Hathi didn't come, that was fine. He'd get someone else to play the trumpet. Or maybe he'd just use his Spotify playlist. So this way, all the animals got an invite to the main event. The cheetah too, despite the fact that he was, well, a cheater. Between him and his bride, Singham got the lion's share of the invites out. Perhaps unsurprisingly. The wedding day was fast approaching. The animals had an emergency conference to discuss how to handle this. Going into the meeting, everyone was half convinced that Singham meant well, and this wasn't just an elaborate ruse to eat them all up. But by the end of the meeting, everyone left convinced that Singham meant well only for himself, and that all this was just an elaborate ruse to eat them all up. It started with a simple remark from the very pessimistic rabbit, who said that all the animals were on the menu. Purely by chance, the rabbit had heard something straight from the horse's mouth. This being the horse in the village who did all the catering for big events like marriages and such. The horse was positive that the lion had only ordered an assortment of bugs. He had not ordered a single item of meat. Nobody knew about Singham's diet. So naturally, the animals became convinced that the bugs were just for spices and garnish, and all the animals were in fact the entrees. Only the turtle knew the truth, but he still kept silent, choosing to remain loyal to a core principle of his profession. He decided that he would go to Singham's wedding. But he was the only one. The turtle made it to the Kalyan Mandap all right, but he got there a few days late, by which time the lion had already realized his folly in trying to be friends with everyone. The turtle really should have gotten a ride to the place, instead of deciding to walk over there. And when he reached, it was too late and the damage was already done. Singham was displeased. The fact that even the turtle hadn't shown up was an insult to injury. The lion expressed his anger just one way that he knew he could. He told his wife, "Ata maji satakli." Good news though, he didn't actually fly into a rage and eat everyone up. Mrs. Genda heard on the grapevine that Singham and his wife moved to Gir National Park after all. They went there for their honeymoon, decided that they liked it, and made the move permanent. The other lions were initially apprehensive, but realized that they didn't have any problems with it when they found that this new couple would not be competing with them for the supply of meat. That's it for this time. A couple of notes. The intent of the original story was to caution against judging someone too hastily. But in my opinion, that's not the point. Of course, it is in the nature of an animal to judge a lion by the ferocity of its roar. If you ask me, the animals were really playing it safe. It was in their nature to distrust a lion. If they had trusted him and they had been proved wrong, they would have paid for it with their lives, and that would have only landed them a Darwin Award for offering themselves up for extinction. In the next episode, we'll get to hear a story about the Asurs and the Devs that's been coming for a long time. I'm extremely grateful for all of the love and support all of you listeners are showing already. It would be amazing if you could also please share the links to the show or to the site sfipodcast.com with your family, friends, and your network. Thank you also for all the comments on social media and on Spotify's Q&A. I can't directly reply to the questions there, but I'll address them here on this show. I'm glad you enjoyed your first episode, Sakshi. Bala, the Dev and Asur story is indeed coming up next week. Ira, thank you for the wonderful feedback. And yes, I will certainly do the next Chandrakanta episode at some point. Thank you, Aniv, for the support as usual. I do have a Vikram and Betal story lined up. Samay, Ramayan 2 will come up. Thanks for your support. Thank you Darsh for the generous praise. And yes, Chandrakanta 2 will be up soon. Mushroom, the Udupi Krishna temple has an interesting history. It sort of overlaps with the story of Kanakadas, which I intended to cover very soon anyway. So I'll work in an explanation of the temple into the story as well. Shalu, thank you yet again for your consistent and thoughtful feedback. If you have any other comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories that you'd like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or reply to the questions on Spotify's Q&A. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to send me an email, it's storiesfromindiapodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.